Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show. And as I've repeated a couple of times now, Clay Hall has decided to step totally into retirement. Enjoyed my time with him, and I will occasionally be having a guest person featuring. And that featured person today, ladies and gentlemen, from the Sporting News, you know him, you love him, Bill Bender. Bill Bender, welcome back to the Tim May Show, my friend.
Hey, Tim, how you doing, man? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing extremely well, considering. I'm also in semi-retirement. I don't know what that means anymore. My wife doesn't know what it means, but I'm here in the studio. You're there on the remote location, a.k.a. your house. And just wanted to get your thoughts on a few things, Bill, before you dive into more important things to do for your company, the Sporting News, where Dude, you're senior writer, et cetera, on that group, right? What is your position with the Sporting News now? Are you part owner?
No, I'm just a senior writer. I'm coming up on, I believe, this college football season will be. I started in 2007. So how does that work? It'll be I've been there 19 full years,
yeah,
and then you're starting year 20,
20th.
Basically. So. Yeah. We'll get into that, and it'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, certainly keeping me busy over there. We've had a lot of 140th anniversary content rolling through in the last couple of weeks, and we're really excited about it, especially this week with our all-decade All-American teams, and then some of the other things we're getting into. But it's an exciting time to work there, and it never gets old.
Hey, can you give a hint about the all-decade team? I mean, can you give one hint? I mean, should Ohio State fans read that story?
Well, I mean, there are plenty of Buckeyes across. Our last two ran today. So what we did, Tim, was we did all-decade All-American teams for the 60s, 70s, 80s through present day. So we have 7 all-decade teams. There are plenty of Ohio State players scattered across those 7 teams, ranging from, the all-60s team, and then you get into the 70s team with Gradishar and Archie Griffin, Jack Tatum, the 90s team, Orlando Pace. You've got the present-day team, the 2020s team. We put Caleb Downs, and the only active player across our 7 teams is Jeremiah. You could have probably got that.
I was going to guess Luke Montgomery. Shoot, no, I got that wrong.
Jeremiah Smith is the only player that is actively playing college football on one of our teams. So it was a cool project. One snub for Ohio State that we are going to hear about, and I'll admit to. I mean, I was part of a panel. I wasn't the only one voicing.
I'm with you.
Chris Spielman did not make the team, which is a bit of a surprise to me. We put on our 80s linebackers, but when you're trying to jam guys in with Derek Thomas, Shane Conlon, and
Brian Bosworth
and Lawrence Taylor, it's tough. But Spielman was one I thought should be on there that wasn't.
Well, he could have been. Y'all could have had super sub, and he could have been. That's how you carry. That's how you cover your CYA. Is add some little nefarious kind of name for a thing where you get that person that you think deserves to be on there. But if it was just best football players, he might have made it, right? But you understand what I'm saying. That'd be a good way to get to CYA. But the interesting thing was, and I've voted on the thing that's coming out. Next week? Your top 20 teams all time, top 20 individual teams all time and stuff. And I'm not giving away anything, except I will give away this one thing that I voted that probably is not going to make it, is that 1973 Ohio State football team that had the 10-10 tie and ended up going to the Rose Bowl, but by the vote of the Big Ten, which, by the way, helped usher in the fact that that more Big Ten teams deserve to go to bowl games, and maybe we're getting to go at that point. Only the winner of the Big Ten got to go, and up until the mid 70s, you only got to go once every other year if you were the winner. So, but I did that 73 team, man. I spoke at their get together, their homecoming a couple of years ago, and what a hellacious football team that was. It just fell through the cracks, right? Because they didn't win a national championship. So I don't know how many. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that special on the Big Ten Network about the tiebreaker, and it was one of the best things that network has ever produced. The documentary on the Ohio State-Michigan game in 1973. What I was going to say, Tim, is, we are putting together our top 20 teams of all time list. We have a blue ribbon panel, I guess is what you would call it. Yourself, some other legendary college football writers on it. We're really excited. We're wrapping it up. Balloting closes here in a couple days, and then we'll have the list. I have a pretty good idea what that 20 is going to look like. One of the things I was going to say though, and looking at your ballot and some other ones,
don't give it all away. Go ahead.
I'm not, but I will say one little part. Like 6 different Ohio State teams have received votes. So how do you choose between that 73 team and the, some of these, some of Urban Meyer's great teams, some of Jim Tressell's great teams. The 68 team obviously gets a lot of run. And that's it's almost like certain schools that can work against you a little bit.
Yes.
Like how do you pick the best Ohio State team when there's 10 good options? Whereas when you look at a school like LSU, it's the 19 team. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the team that and it was a legendary team, no doubt. But so it's been a really fun exercise. I love looking at the ballots and just seeing how everybody's are a little bit different. You're obviously your depth of knowledge of the sport and how many years you've covered it. We were definitely happy to have you on the panel. I'm really excited about it, Tim.
Well, here's what's cool before we move on. There are several teams on my ballot that I turned into you that didn't win the national championship. That doesn't mean, in my mind, they weren't the greatest team necessarily of their year or should be included on one of the great teams of all time because of the talent, et cetera. So I tried to, I don't know who's older than me on your panel, but dude, 90% of the teams I voted for, I actually saw play in some form or fashion, television, live or whatever. And it's whenever you start deciphering one football team from one period from another, I looked at it more as, did this team revolutionize something? Did this team usher in an era? Did it do this, that, and the other? And I will be honest, I'm not sure both of these teams will make it, but that's, for example, why I voted both the 14 and the 24 Ohio State football teams in there, because they the first year of the expanded college football playoff was 14, and the first year of the super expanded college football playoff was 24, and Ohio State ended up winning both of those championships. In other words, in an extended playoff format. I've told people before, I'm more impressed by what Nick Saban did at Alabama in terms of national championships than what Bear Bryant did, because all of Bear Bryant's championships were based on a popularity poll. Were based on the polls. All of Nick Saban's had to go out and win some form of a playoff to become the national champion. So that irks some people in Alabama when I said that. Doesn't mean those other teams weren't great, but what Nick Saban did was extraordinary in this playoff era. I think you agree with that, right?
Yeah, I think it's one of those deals where you do have to answer your question first, Bear Bryant versus Saban, that 79 Alabama team's pretty darn good.
Pretty damn good.
Like they their defensive statistics are pretty nasty across any era. But yeah, I don't know. I would argue it both ways, though. In the 70s, for example, Alabama wasn't the only blue blood on the block. You had USC, you had Ohio State, you had Oklahoma.
USC,
USC. My editor, Bill Trocchi, is working on a story now about team of the decade for each decade, and that's probably the hardest decade. Notre Dame. You had 6. There was, I think he said to me this morning, there were 7 teams or 6 or 7 teams in the 70s that had at least 90 wins. So I could argue that, maybe that era was a little bit tougher, especially when it was by a beauty pageant in some ways. Whereas Nick Saban in the 2010s, Alabama was Alabama or Clemson, and sometimes Ohio State. That was basically the 3 college football powers.
That's good.
So I don't know, Tim. It's a rare. I might disagree a little bit, but I see your point. It is harder.
I'm just saying. Here's the thing. It's harder, I think, to win the national championship now because you have to win it on the field.
Correct.
My point. The 1968 Ohio State team, bless its heart, played 10 total games, which included the Rose Bowl. Indiana went 16-0. I think it was 16-0, right? Yeah. Indiana went 16-0 last year. They played almost time and again as many games as that 1968 Ohio State team did, which, by the way, was chock full of talent and probably could compete on any level based on modern training methods, et cetera, like that. So I see exactly what you're talking about. And like the other thing you just were talking about without saying it, the 70s were Bear Bryant and Woody Hayes. That was their best decade in terms of just having team after team after team after team that was worthy of at least making a run for the national championship.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes we always do that. It's hard to compare eras and all that. But yeah, it's a fun list. I can't wait to, like I said, I have a pretty good idea who those 20 teams are going to be. There's a couple like right on the line. You did say something else I didn't address. Like there are teams on there and should be on there that either didn't win the national championship, or the hard part is you have so many undefeated teams. There's a couple teams with losses that are going to be hard to, turn up. I think the one popular team here it's going to be interesting to see where they land, or if they land, is the Florida team in 2008 with Tebow. That ended up winning the national championship after they lose to Ole Miss. No doubt one of the greatest talented rosters of all time. But again, you're comparing, how do you pick some of these schools it does work against them? How do you pick the best Alabama team? How do you pick the best Notre Dame team? They've got several, when you get into the 40s and 50s, some options there. And then how do you pick, whereas like Clemson 2018, pretty easy choice. You know what I mean? That they blew through everybody. So it is. I love doing stuff like this. I actually love reading everybody else's ballots and kind of being like, oh, they have them there. So, and as I said to you and others that voted on this is your ballot. I'm not influencing anything. I just want to see how it turns up, because when you have 20 to 25 different opinions, it typically, Tim, as you know, you find pretty close to the right answers.
Yeah. And you saw, I'm not going to give it away, but like with Alabama, the way I left it up to it was when it came to Bear Bryant, what team did Bear Bryant say was his best team overall? And I won't give that away. That team might not even make it because it didn't win the national championship. Big upset that season. And didn't win the national championship, but went undefeated. And any Alabama fan knows the team I'm talking about. And, of course, one quick thing before we move on, because I want to ask you about this Ohio State team. Where do you think this Ohio State team this year is going to stack up when they do this 30 years from now? But you're going to say it's yet to be seen. I think everybody says 1995 Nebraska when you think about just a consummate team that ran roughshod and was just so thick offensively and defensively. I'm curious to see where that comes out, because I will give people a little sneak preview. I voted that the best team overall, because I think that team, based on if it could change things, I think that team could compete in almost any decade. And that's not what we were voting on either, but I think it could compete in almost any decade based on modern training things and also modern approaches to offense. They didn't have to be that wild on offense. They just lined up and blew people off the ball. So it'll be interesting to see where that 95 Nebraska team falls.
Yeah. Obviously they're 94 and 95 Nebraska. Which one do you pick? Do you pick the one that ran through Warren Sapp in Miami, or do you pick the one that ran through Steve Spurrier in Florida? Both teams outstanding. I think most college football fans can probably get a sense for who the top 5 or 6 teams in this thing will be. And I think that's sorting them out is interesting. One thing I did come up with last night is we've had, I believe, 18 people vote on this thing. We're going to have a couple more, and 5 different schools have received a first place vote. One school only, and I won't spoil it. There's only one school that has been on every single ballot. So think about that. If you have a top 20, and you voted on this, to give it I can give a little bit more away. Like Dennis Dodd voted on this, writer I highly respect. Some of my former Sporting News colleagues are going to vote on this. And, it's just, I picked people that I respect. I picked people that I like being around. I picked people that I know the game. And just think about that, though, when you have like 18 ballots in and only one team has been on all 18 of them. That tells you how many great teams there have been. That tells you, we all kind of think a little bit differently. And that's that's when you, again, I love doing these type stories for Sporting News because as somebody commented on our page the other day, Tim, they said, this is why I used to get Sporting News, to look at an all-decade All-American team, to look at a greatest teams list voted on by, who I think are the best writers to do this in my lifetime, like guys that I was reading when I was younger. So it's just fun to be a part of that, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I thanks for including me because I totally enjoyed it. And what I found out more than anything else is, the first 5, even the top 10, came off pretty easy in my mind. But then I started thinking, wait a minute, I left this team out. You know me. I sent you inserts. Because I go, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Is this your final answer, Tim? That's what I was thinking at one point.
But here's the thing. The one thing I did count on is like the mass voting deal is that maybe I left an Alabama team or two out of it because you can make a case for several Alabama teams being on it, right? I mean, but golly, would they have beaten the 56 Oklahoma team in a head-to-head? No, that's not what you're looking at. I'm looking at, did that team hold sway like no other in its era, in its decade, in fact, in its year? And like 56 Oklahoma was the creme de la creme, in my opinion, of what Bud Wilkinson did there. And and that's on my list somewhere,
Well, and sorting out the Ohio State teams, I know we want to talk some Buckeyes here, but like you could make an argument. So I'm thinking about like when you grew up in Lancaster, Ohio, you would hear about, obviously grew up hearing about the 68 team and Rex Kern. Rex Kern's a Lancaster, Ohio guy, Lancaster, Ohio legend, one of the probably top 5 people to come out of Lancaster, Ohio, I would venture to say. We've got to come, like people, period. Like they, we've had some legends there.
Let's include Bobby Carpenter, so he won't start crying.
Bobby's right. Bobby's family's right there, man. With Bob, between him and Rob and his brothers, they're a great founding Lancaster family. And
amen.
But I'm a little lower down on the list, maybe in the hundreds or 200s or something.
Hey, you're not done yet.
I got work to do to climb up this list. But anyway, you grew up listening and hearing about the 68s all the time, and then in my lifetime, I would argue there are probably a couple Ohio State teams that didn't win national championships that could be on this list. The 95 team, the 98 team that lost to Nick Saban and Michigan State. These were super talented teams. I like how you brought up that they do have the first team to win the 4-team playoff, and that was a NFL roster of a team, and then they win the 12-team playoff in the first year. And I think those are kind of landmark teams, so to speak, that we'll look at. I think as history, maybe like when they do a 150 or 160 at the SN anniversary, that those are the type of teams that will be looked on better as they age. They'll age like wine, right? Or scotch or whatever. They're going to age very well because of the format they were in.
Yeah, that's why they're on my ballot. Number one. Number two, I totally enjoyed that. Like I said, how do you compare the 24 Notre Dame team to the 2019 LSU team? I mean, it's great. But the 24 Notre Dame team put Newt Rockne and Notre Dame solidly on the map, put them as the rabbit in the Greyhound race. They became the rabbit in the Greyhound race. And in terms of people started chasing that. And I think that's a bellwether in all kinds of ways. That's why they're on my ballot. I just certain teams just set the tone for what's to come. And so we could talk about that ad nauseum. Real quick, the 2026 Ohio State football team begins camp on August 6th, which is tomorrow as you and I record this. What are you most curious about this football team going from, a lot of people still have it number 1, number 2, number 3 in the country, depending on who you're looking at. We saw the coaches preseason poll had Ohio State number 1. In your mind, is that justified? Number 2, what's Ohio State got to get straight in the next 4 weeks to, in fact, show that it is that worthy, it is that caliber?
I mean, they're going to be. I mean, I'm not surprised they're number 1 in the coaches poll. It's always a safe pick among the elite schools, obviously. That just means that they hit really high on every ballot. And there are right now, in my opinion, seven 6 elite teams, and I think Miami can be the 7th.
Who are your 6?
Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon. That's 3 from the same conference that I think all 3 have made I know they've all made the playoff each of the last 2 years. All 3 are fully capable of winning a national championship. I'm not as down on, I know Indiana lost a lot, but I still think they're going to be very, very good. They have plenty of pieces back. And if Josh Hoover is who I think he's going to be for them, they're going to be really good. Oregon's loaded. Ohio State's loaded. All 3 of those programs are very capable of winning it. I'd have Notre Dame on that list. There's a lot of hype around the Irish, and with good reason. And then the 2 SEC schools, Texas, who Ohio State will see right away, and Georgia. So there you go, Tim. Ohio State's going to play 3 of the 6 other teams that I think could win a national championship. So you can't say that the iron won't sharpen the iron, or that they won't be ready come for the college football playoff, because that schedule is a brutal one.
Yeah, Jeremiah Smith talked about that. So did Ryan Day at the Big Ten meetings last week, and that is interesting. Jeremiah Smith even brought it up last year, except for the Texas game, was pretty much a cakewalk until they got to the playoffs, and we all look. That included the game against the team up north, aka Michigan, in the snow. They held sway with a quarterback from Southern California. He had no problem throwing the ball in the snow in the cold. So the bottom line is, then they run into a team that not only is extremely talented in Indiana, but has got all that video to watch of their run. And anybody could notice the offensive line on the right side, especially right guard. If you could play some games over there, you might be able to get to the quarterback, Julian Sayin, and throw their vaunted passing game off kilter. And they did that. So did Miami. And boom. The run real weak spot on your team caught up with you at the worst time, which was the Big Ten championship game in the playoff. I think they're going to get that settled out. Matter of fact, I'm talking about that later in this podcast after you hang up on me and move on to bigger and better things. But the bottom line, what when you look at this team, what do you see as an area or something, some area of the team, maybe some individual that needs to step up for you to really anoint them, I guess, for want of another term?
Well, I think they've already been anointed. You mentioned the offensive line. That
True
will be
that.
Always under, the microscope. When, especially, I think part of it is, and I had this discussion last weekend with some buddies, not writers, like they were asking.
Were y'all drinking? Were y'all drinking?
We were on a golf course. So what do you think?
Okay,
of course.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, we talked a little bit about part of the issue, I think, is sometimes Ohio State doesn't play against opponents where they're blocking, the talent that they saw in those last 2 games. Like Michigan didn't have the defensive line talent that they had in previous seasons last year. Penn State didn't even have that last year. Well, they had Durant, but they weren't as good. So, when you get into that and here's Indiana's active defensive front with Tyreek Tucker and Mario Landino and really good linebackers that fly to the football. Then you get Miami, who had the 2 edge rushers on top of a very physical middle of the defense with Basante. I mean, maybe that's part of it. It takes a minute to settle in. But I think the offensive line with Sierreveld and Luke Montgomery, those are 2 guys that, all-American caliber players. So they figure some things out there. On the defensive side, anytime you have 11 players drafted or 11 starters that get drafted in a 2-year stretch, that's great for the poster, which that Ohio State poster was very cool. But now you need some dudes to step up. You need a Kenyatta Jackson. You need a Jalen McClain, who I've read nothing but great things from people like you and others on the Ohio State beat. He's a big player for them this year. So I think those are 2 that stand out, that if they take that next level to first-round NFL stud, that could only do good things for Ohio State. And Arthur Smith, right? Can I answer Arthur Smith? He's a guy that could take this offense to the next level.
Yeah. I mean, or to a different level. That's the way I look at it. Yeah. It's like, I'm with you 100% on that. Hey, when you look at the Big Ten, who people keep asking me, who do I think could be a surprise team in the Big Ten? And I'm looking around. Number one, Wisconsin's got a tough start to its season, but then things level off pretty dramatically for them. I had Phil Steele on here a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about it. He thinks Wisconsin's got a good chance to go like 8-4 because clearly Luke Fickell needs that, right? He doesn't need an embarrassing start where they pull the trigger before he gets to the cruise altitude, if you follow my drift. But who is a team that you think could be a surprise and jump up and bite?
Well, Wisconsin's interesting. I mean, I've read some good things about the quarterback, the situation there, and they scored.
They keep him healthy.
Their schedule it's still brutal, but it's not as brutal as it was last year. So, I mean, they're one that's gaining a little bit of momentum. I think Washington's the other one, with DeMond Williams and the roster that they have. They've recruited well. They had a top 10 recruiting class. So maybe that doesn't show up this year, but I think it does give them a little bit more depth. And, so Washington's one of those teams I'm looking at that probably – were they ranked yesterday? I didn't see.
I can't remember. I think they were.
I think they're right at the end of the pool.
Right.
So let's look at the preseason pool here real quick. And I mean, they could be – they were ranked a little bit higher than I thought. They were ranked 19 and Iowa 21. So those are those teams that you look at and you're like, are they going to be a surprise team or what? But I think Washington's a team that I really enjoy and I really think will do well and could easily be one of the best teams in the Big Ten. And maybe that fourth playoff team if we're lucky. Yeah.
See, I think the team that could be in there really throwing fastballs this year finally is USC.
Yep.
And the fact, I think, because there's 1,000 schedules, but I think USC hosts both Ohio State and Oregon.
And they play Indiana too, right? Or
yeah,
they have
I can't remember if they do or not. But my point is, if they win one of those two games, it gives them, in my opinion, a leg up with getting in the playoff if nothing else. And because I think it's a very much improved team compared to 3 years ago, and even compared to last year. And when you hear Lincoln Riley talking about the depth on both sides of the line of scrimmage, I'm talking about offensive line, defensive line, where they've fallen short a couple times in the last couple of years. I just think USC is that it's hard to envision, like you're talking about voting for these all-time teams, right? There were several USC teams on my ballot because back in the day of John McKay and right on through the lineup there, Pete Carroll, I mean, they were the best teams in the country. So they have that in their legacy. They have that on their resume, but I think they have a chance to maybe step up. And you never know what one big win along the way, how that's going to accelerate your team. And so I've got USC in my crosshairs in terms of a team that could jump up and at least possibly make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that we have them in the playoff in our projected playoff field.
I hope so.
The one thing, though, and I keep saying this, like when you're trying to break down USC, Penn State, and Michigan, one of those three is not like the other. Is that old rhyme or whatever?
Yes.
But here's why. USC and Michigan play Oregon and play Ohio State and play Indiana. And USC still got to play Indiana and Penn State on the road. So they've got to figure out the travel piece. Penn State plays none of those teams.
Right.
They play USC and Michigan, but they don't play Indiana, Oregon, or Ohio State. So you look at Penn State's schedule, and if they can find a way to win at Michigan, which they haven't done in a while, and if they can find a way to beat USC at home, which is a prime candidate for a whiteout game, Matt Campbell will have Penn State in the playoff discussion. Now, that's assuming that they don't lose another one along the way. They do play Washington. They do have a lot of Iowa State transfers. We're going to have to see how that works. But I do think the Nittany Lions with Rocco Becht are going to be one of those teams that we're talking about in November. Like, I don't know if they belong, but it doesn't matter. They're there. So keep an eye on that.
Hey, last thing, because you got to go. Obviously, that Senate bill is sitting in there waiting to possibly go to at least a Senate vote by the end of this week. I don't think it's going to make it based on everything you're reading about it, but at least the SEC and the Big Ten finally signed off on a version of it. Bill, is this stuff never going to end? I mean, in the crosshairs of the litigators out there right now, for example, is the transfer portal situation. That's too deep of a conversation for us to get into right now. the litigators, you know what I'm talking about, the lawyers still see chum in the water, no matter what comes out of Washington, in terms of this bill. But as you look at this bill, I know you've read a little bit about it because you're required to, being a journalist who covers college football. What is it that you like that you've seen so far from that bill that you think is sorely needed? Is it the cap, at least the cap on the spending, which would be like $48 million, which includes a revenue share, and then the retention share, which could be upwards of $25 million to keep players around that you spend a lot of time developing instead of them leaving for greener pastures, not necessarily better pastures? What is it that you like about that bill? And I'll let you go.
Yeah, I think it's getting us toward the things that we need. I mean, obviously there was going to be some side effects of the 5 for 5, which I think the rule at its heart, once you get past the kids it affects, it's going to be a good thing for college football. Yeah. I think transfer portal rules, protecting rivalries is good. Working on the calendar. I mean, that's something that needs to happen anyway. So, it's not perfect, but I mean, the fact that we're not just saying somebody needs to do something, or it's the wild, wild west, and we're actually having some legislation try to do that. I would think, I don't know if college football can pull off a salary cap, but I do think that we need to work towards student athletes having collective bargaining, and perhaps being employees of the university, maybe as an LLC, however you want to do it.
Don't bring that up. Don't bring up the word contracts, man.
Right. But I think that's somewhere we should go. And I also think that athletes should maybe have to sign a 2-year contract when they go to a school. That would cut down the number of transfers. But, it is the fact that it's getting pushed through and it's getting national attention, and the Big Ten and the SEC, despite the heavy rivalry on the field, are working together off the field, I think are all good things for college football.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Bender of the Sporting News, one of my good friends. I could say that, right, Bill?
Oh, absolutely. And I have a feeling we're going to be doing this a lot more in the fall.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Absolutely. If you can talk, I can do the walk. If it means coming to your house, you've beaten me, we'll meet at a diner somewhere. But Bill Bender of the Sporting News, it is always a pleasure, my friend. And have a good weekend, brother.
Well, thanks so much, Tim. Thanks for having me on.
Man, I always appreciate Bill Bender joining me. I owe him a bunch of lunches. Maybe I can give him a gift card. We'll see. I think he likes go to Dairy Queen. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. Bill Bender, though, appreciate you coming on, my man. Or to pick on something he was talking about, or I was talking about with him. When you look at this 2026 Ohio State team, which opens preseason camp on Thursday, as I pointed out, my big question about it is chock full of talent, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, at the skill positions, wow. I don't know if any team in the country has got more candidates to play wide receiver, defensive backs, even at linebacker. I mean, maybe that would be the second biggest question on this team is, you're replacing 2 All-American caliber, big-time NFL draft choice dudes in Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese. But I think Ohio State's got the wherewithal, starting with Peyton Pierce and then Riley Pettijohn. Those could be your starting, possible starting linebackers when they play at Texas on the second week of the year, second weekend of the season, which is, I think, September the 12th. And they're both from the state of Texas. Man, would that be an interesting thing to throw out there? And, of course, Christian Allegro, the transfer from Wisconsin, looked very effective, very good in the spring as a guy they could use in several different ways, including possibly coming off the edge. But the linebacker core, when you lose 2 super studs like they had at linebacker, it's always a question until guys step up and consistently get the job done, consistently show their starting caliber. A lot of guys can go in there for a play or two or a series or two, but to be that starter, that guy that's got to carry the water every week, show up hurting or not, and play at a high level, that'll be fun to watch how that develops. And by the way, speaking of that, a freshman, Sincere Johnson, man, he looks the part physically as a possible guy that could step up in there and make some noise at linebacker as the season progresses. So we'll see how that goes. And of course, TJ Alford had a really good spring because he had all these opportunities because Riley Pettijohn, for example, couldn't take part. He was recovering from a little nip here and a nip there. But the bottom line is snip there, snip here, snip there. Well, I think nip, it can be taken all kinds of ways. But bottom line is, I think the wherewithal is there for a big time solid linebacker core that could be stellar, and we'll see where that goes. But once again, it gets back to, in my opinion, this is a team that has a chance to outscore you if, in fact, the offensive line is intact. And like Bill and I talked about, as the old John Cooper saying used to be, it don't catch up with you till it catches up with you. And the right guard position on the Ohio State team caught up with them against Indiana and Miami. I'm not blaming everything that went wrong just on a right guard, but we know a couple of guys played in there against Indiana, or excuse me, against Miami because Tigger Shabola was banged up, and they just didn't get the job done for one another way of putting it. And I had to flip Austin Cerville at one point. The bottom line is Austin Cerville played a lot of that in spring ball before he got banged up and had to go out with a touch-up surgery. And but it allowed Ian Moore to play a lot, get the lion's share of the snaps at left tackle, the way we understand it, during the spring. And I think he made a major step forward. And you'll hear Ryan Day here in a minute talk about the offensive line and how soon he'd like to settle on that. You got to believe he and Arthur White and the offensive line coach have already thought through a lot of these scenarios of how they want to line up. But you've got to get that figured out sooner rather than later. And so let's listen to what Ryan Day had to say about that in Chicago last week, about how soon he would like to kind of get that settled out. And remember, there are guys coming back from surgeries like Josh Padilla, a guy that was going to figure heavily possibly into that right guard scenario. And he didn't get to practice in the spring. So how he's coming back, what shape is he in terms of physically ready to go? That remains to be seen. I'm hearing he's raring to go, but there will be a lot of experimenting possibly still going on in the first several days. But let's hear what Ryan Day had to say about that.
Week, I don't know, let's say it's 7, probably practice 9 or 10. We'd like to have that sorted out. Yeah. And a big part of that is going to be how Phil plays, how Josh plays, how Ian plays, because if that allows us the opportunity to move Austin, then we will. But the good news is we have some good options there.
Yeah, they have some options there, including Philip Daniels obviously missed a lot of the spring. He and Cerville both had little touch-ups, surgeries. So, Philip Daniels at right tackle, but were they totally pleased with the way he played last year? At times, yeah. I mean, he had a tough assignment against Miami. Reuben Bain is the real deal. I know I've said that before, but I will say it 1,000 other times. 1,000 is 1,000, by the way. I will say that 1,000 other times because, wow. And boy, when you allowed him to get into that track stance and just fire off from like 6 yards away and make you take a shot at him one way or the other, or try to handle the impact of the cannonball or handle the impact of the curveball, that's what Philip Daniels faced. A lot of lessons learned, I'm sure, there for Philip Daniels at right tackle. But how he figures into it, I got a feeling he's going to end up still being the right tackle unless things change dramatically. But Josh Padilla is kind of the linchpin now because I think he was right guard worthy as that year went along. We got banged up at basically the wrong time, and we'll see how that works out for them. But with the weapons Ohio State has on board, and with Julian Sayin back ready to launch them, boy, if they can get the offensive line figured out, especially going down to Texas in week 2, this team can take a huge step toward being the team it wants to be. And it's going to get those tests from some pretty good defensive fronts as this season goes along. And several of those defensive fronts at their place, like at Indiana, at Southern California, at Iowa. So the tests will be there. And of course, they will host Oregon. Man, what a schedule. Yeah, so offensive line is going to be under the microscope when Ohio State starts its preseason camp, obviously. But it's not the only position group under the microscope. As Ryan Day pointed out, you look at the running back room, for example, and you got Bo Jackson, went over 1,000 yards last year as a freshman. Tremendous year, especially as the year ensued. And Isaiah West, but neither one of them took part in spring football because of touch-up surgeries. That's the way it goes when you play 14 games. Guys are going to get banged up in some form or fashion, and they need that little tune-up after the season is over. And Ohio State had quite a few of those. But it's my buddy Spencer Holbrook, former confidant of mine, former coworker of mine, asked Ryan Day last week, the position groups he's got his eyes on. One of them definitely is running back because there's a lot of big time potential there. It's like a box of dynamite, but where are the blasting caps? How is it going to actually set up? So let's hear what Ryan Day thinks about a group or two that he's definitely got to have his eye on, besides, of course, the offensive line.
I don't think that anybody's there yet. I think there's some question marks just because they haven't done it before. But to me, a position group that's got to have a great preseason is the running back group. I know we have Isaiah coming back. We have Bo coming back. We've added Jacoby. We have Legend. We have Turbo. Okay, we got these pieces. But, if we're going to get to where we need to go, we need a high level of play at that running back position. So this is critical, and both of those guys didn't practice in the spring. So that's one that, I got my eye on big time. The good news is they both had very good freshman campaigns, but, here's where you got to take the next step. I think about J.K. Dobbins in year 2. He unbelievable freshman year, solid second year, ridiculous junior year, right? And so we've had guys in a program, very good freshman year, and I'm not going to say sophomore slump, but that second year was okay. And then the third year, they turned it on. Well, we can't afford to do that in that room this year. This is going to be a huge year for those guys. So that's certainly an area that we got to get great production from this season.
Very interesting point, because he's exactly right. I mean, the sophomore slump is a real deal when it comes to through the eons of college football players, especially in the skill positions, the running back rooms, et cetera. But we know Bo Jackson's capable. Carlos Loughlin's been on those guys like sweat, to get better, stronger, faster. You want to see that group, for example, step up in the pass protection area of things. That's where J.K. Dobbins was really good. That's where Ezekiel Elliott had no peer, in my opinion, of the running backs I've seen play at Ohio State. He had no peer in terms of pass protection. That is such a vital part of playing running back in the modern game. And then you want to see Bo Jackson and Isaiah West hit some home runs. That didn't really happen last year, or at least on a regular basis. They came close. They had some triples. They had quite a few doubles, but the home run was a rare occurrence for an Ohio State running back. And so you want to see that. And how much will perhaps a more willing to run quarterback in Julian Sayin, how much will that enhance that running back core in terms of not just being able to put the bullseye on the running back in terms of the defense as a possible run threat. And we've talked about it before. Legend Bay, gosh, what a name. What a name. He's already become a legend a little bit with the way the coaches have talked about him. He hadn't played a down for Ohio State in a real game. Of course, he wasn't available in the spring game because of getting banged up. But Legend Bay, man, I've been covering Ohio State since 1984, so this would be, 43rd season. I've never heard coaches talk about a freshman as much as well as they've talked about Legend Bay. And that includes even Jeremiah Smith a couple of years ago. I mean, Legend Bay, you got to see it to believe it. But, man, they could really do some things there. I mean, Arthur Smith, I know, is having some of those conjuring moments where you've got to figure, how can we get this guy the ball in space, either as a running back or a slot receiver, or maybe even put him out wide occasionally. That'll be interesting to see as the season goes. Keep that in mind as the season goes, how that evolves. All of these things won't necessarily be online in week 2 when Ohio State plays at Texas, or week 1 when they open with Ball State, prohibitive favorite over Ball State. That's putting it mildly. But to see how this team develops as the year goes on, that's what's going to be interesting for me to watch. I've always been curious about who's going to step up, who's going to step sideways, and who's going to step back. So, as camp opens, those are some things to keep your eye on. I know you people who are going to have a chance to go out there and watch camp are going to get a treat. You're going to get a few autographs. You're going to maybe have a chance at some autographs that could prove very valuable, maybe immediately and possibly down the road. So maybe that $50 will be well spent paying the admission price to watch an Ohio State practice. You got 3 chances on the August 6th, 7th, and 8th. We'll see how those tickets go. But the bottom line is I'm looking very much forward to this Ohio State preseason camp. You've got Matt Patricia working with a different set of a different deck of cards than he had a year ago. And clearly he was looking forward to it because he could have gone, 8 or 10 other places. But he elected to stay at Ohio State and for another season. Wow, that's very interesting. The way he told it and the way you understand it from others who were around him, he very much enjoyed that first year in Columbus. And just the way the fans reacted, but the way the team reacted, just right on down the line. Of course, he's making a lot of money to be the defensive coordinator at Ohio State, but he could have been making a lot of money elsewhere, but he opted to stay. And, of course, Arthur Smith, we're all curious of what's coming down the pike with Arthur Smith as Ohio State's first-team offensive coordinator, working with some known factors, but also bringing along some unknowns, at least to Ohio State. How will he and the coaches work those new wide receivers into the mix, or will they? Will they lean heavily on Brandon Ennis and Jeremiah Smith while they work the new guys like Kyle Parker, the transfer from LSU, and Devin McEwen, the transfer from UT San Antonio, into the mix, and those freshmen led by Chris Henry Jr., but also Brock Boyd. Where will they all fit? I mean, man, if you got to watch spring like I did, there is no doubt about it. Those guys have the goods, but showing it on a practice field and getting it done on the playing field are two different animals. So we'll see how that goes. And, of course, I'm very curious on how the safety room is going to sort itself out, how Devin Sanchez, he looks primed to really step up at that other cornerback spot. Jermaine Matthews, lessons he learned the hard way maybe a couple of times last year, that's going to help him at that other corner spot because there's depth there behind them. So, man, just so many things to keep your eye on if you're going to an Ohio State practice. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to doing this once again 3 times a week, maybe more. If the bonus situation calls for it, there'll be bonus situations. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Tim May. This is the Tim May Show featuring, hey, who's it going to be featuring next time? Tune in. We'll see you then.